All right, ready for a deep dive. Today, we're going straight to ancient Rome with Marcus Aurelius.
Oh, fascinating.
This emperor, right, he's conquering, he's ruling,
Right.
but he's also jotting down wisdom for a good life. The kind of stuff that still resonates today, centuries later.
It's amazing, right? His meditations, it wasn't meant for us. It was like his own personal journal, introspection in the middle of chaos.
And yet here we are, looking for guidance in it.
Yeah.
And it's not even just him, right? We've got meditations, but you sent over all this commentary from scholars.
Yeah.
Like Francis Hutcheson. He saw these connections to Christianity,
Oh, definitely. And
which is a whole other layer.
yeah, he was insightful that way. He wasn't just, I don't know, explaining Stoicism. He saw it reflected in Christian teachings, which I think just adds a really cool dimension when you're trying to understand both philosophies,
Absolutely.
how they could even, like, intersect.
So before we go too far, before we get lost in the mind of an emperor philosopher,
Okay.
can we just get on the same page?
Yeah.
What exactly are we talking about when we say Stoicism? Because it's more than just like keeping a stiff upper lip.
Right, exactly. It's more about, well, imagine this. Virtue, reason, accepting what you can't control.
Okay.
It's about understanding that happiness, real fulfillment, it comes from within.
Okay.
That's Stoicism in a nutshell.
All right. So inner peace, big part of it. But this is Marcus Aurelius. He wasn't exactly, meditating in a Zen garden every day.
No, not at all.
He's an emperor, making huge decisions, facing rebellions, dealing with plagues. How do you find inner peace in all that?
See, that's what makes meditation so fascinating. It's like we're getting a glimpse into, like, his mind, someone with so much responsibility, trying to live by these principles,
Right.
and that struggle, trying to find that balance between, like, who we are inside and what the world's demanding of us. That's something we can all relate to.
Absolutely, yeah. And speaking of relatable, there's this one passage, it's Marcus Aurelius, using the metaphor of a puppet
Oh, yeah.
to describe people who are ruled by their passions.
Right.
Such a vivid image.
It's powerful, right? It gets right to the heart of Stoic thought. See, they believed that if your passions were unchecked, like anger, jealousy, fear, that was the source of suffering. So to live a good life, a fulfilling life, you had to learn how to even recognize those emotions and then master them.
So it's not about pretending you don't have feelings, but it's about not letting them control you.
Exactly, yeah. Easier said than done, though, right?
Oh, for sure. For sure. So where do we even start?
Well, that's where the whole reason part of Stoicism comes in.
Wow.
It's about thinking clearly, logically, to understand the world, make choices, and, yeah, manage those pesky passions.
Right, right. It's about finding that balance.
Yes, exactly.
It's interesting you say balance because when you think about the world Marcus Aurelius was living in, plagues, wars, political intrigue,
It was a lot.
balance was probably a daily challenge.
All the time.
And it makes me think about this other passage. Marcus finds comfort in the vastness of the universe. He's talking about how short human life is, and there's this peace in that realization. Why do you think that resonated so much with him?
I think that's where we bump into this key Stoic concept, amor fati. Basically, it means loving your fate, accepting everything that happens, even the hard stuff, as part of this larger cosmic order. And when you can accept what you can't control, time, the universe, we become open to this tranquility. We stop fighting,
So not necessarily liking everything, but just acknowledging it as part of a bigger picture.
Yes, exactly. And in that acceptance, that letting go of control, that's where they felt real freedom was. It's about focusing on what you can control, your
Sure.
reactions, choices, actions, and finding that peace within that space.
It's about choosing how you respond to the world instead of letting the world dictate your inner state. It's powerful. And Marcus Aurelius constantly reminds himself, and, us, to focus on that control. What about you? Was there a passage about that stuck with you?
Oh, there were so many, but this one, it always comes to mind. It's where Marcus says, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Simple, but it really gets to the core of it,
He's saying, life's going to throw stuff at you, but you can choose how you react to it, control your thoughts.
Exactly. And that's a choice, an internal freedom that no one can take away from you.
Empowering.
It really is. It's understanding the power of our own thoughts. When we can control those, we can control how we feel, even when things are hard.
But how do we actually do that? It's easy to say control your thoughts, but we're not emperors, right? How does this work for, the average person?
See, that's what's cool about Stoicism. It's not about, these big pronouncements. It's about the small choices we make every single day.
Yeah.
Each day is a chance to practice. And that's something Marcus Aurelius really understood. Emperor, but still human, still grappling with his own flaws.
And you see that in his writing, right?
Yeah.
It's honest, raw even.
Exactly. And I think that's why it still works today, you know? He reminds us that being happy isn't about what's happening externally, but about what's going on internally, how we choose to see things, how we react.
Taking responsibility for our own happiness no matter what.
Exactly.
You know what's wild? How some of these Stoic ideas, they pop up with the early Christians.
Oh, totally. Hutcheson, he picked up on that too.
The parallels.
Yeah, it's almost like they were striving for similar things ethically.
Makes you wonder, did Stoicism influence them? It predates Christianity.
It's a great question and a possibility. I mean, Stoicism had a huge impact on Western thought. It was everywhere in Rome, and these ideas, they were around as Christianity was developing.
Right.
Now, was there direct influence? Hard to say definitively, but the fact that there could be these shared threads, that's fascinating.
Okay, but that brings up something we can't ignore.
What's that?
We're talking about compassion, forgiveness, but Marcus Aurelius lived when Christians were persecuted.
Yeah, that's true.
And history isn't clear on where he stood on that.
Yeah.
How do we make sense of that? Knowing what we know from his writing.
It's a really good point, and it shows how hard it can be to look back at historical figures. It's easy to judge by today's standards, but Marcus Aurelius, he was in a totally different world. An emperor trying to hold together this massive empire.
So trying to understand the world through his eyes.
Exactly. And realizing that everyone, even people we admire, are complicated. Virtues, flaws, you know.
Yeah.
To really understand them, we have to recognize that. We can't just pick and choose the parts we like.
Holding those two things at the same time, the wisdom and then like the reality of his actions.
Yeah, it's about nuance, right? History is rarely black and white. It's all about shades of gray.
It's true. Reminds us that this search for knowledge, for a good life, it's a journey. Always more to learn, more to find out, and sometimes it challenges what we thought we knew.
Absolutely. And that's a key takeaway from Marcus Aurelius, from Stoicism itself. It's about self-reflection, self-improvement, trying to live out our values even when the world's pulling us in different directions.
So how do we do that?
Yeah.
How do we take these old ideas and actually use them now?
I think it starts with realizing Marcus Aurelius wasn't trying to hand us all the answers. He was sharing his thoughts, his struggles, hoping it might help someone someday. He even mentions a future reader.
Like he's talking across time, directly to us.
Right. It's incredible, and that says a lot about his words. You know, as we're getting to the end of our deep dive into the meditations, there's this quote I wanted to share. He says, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one."
He got straight to the point, didn't he?
Right. It's a call to action. Don't just talk about being good, do it.
Walk the walk.
Exactly. I think it leaves us with a lot to think about
For sure.
as we keep going on our own journeys.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? Anything from today that really stood out? Something you'll take with you?
You know, for me, it's remembering that inner peace isn't about avoiding life's hard parts. It's about facing them with, well, wisdom, strength, and maybe some Stoic acceptance.
Beautifully said.
It's that control, recognizing what we have it over, and finding that inner freedom that nothing can touch,
And it's a journey worth taking.
even when it's tough.
Yes. It reminds me of something else he wrote. He said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way."
Wow.
A final thought from Marcus Aurelius.
I like it.
He's pushing us to see obstacles as opportunities and to remember that even when things are tough, we have the power to choose.
And that's what it's all about, right?
I think.
You know, Stoicism, a meaningful life.
Absolutely.
So we left off talking about these, like, parallels between Stoicism and early Christian thought.
Yeah.
What was it that Hutcheson found so interesting about that?
Well, he saw how much of Marcus Aurelius's writing, especially on forgiveness, compassion, sounded a lot like Jesus. It's like they were both going for these same ethical goals, even coming from different places.
Yeah, like Marcus talks about using reason to fight anger, meeting hostility with kindness.
Right.
There's that line where he says, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That's basically turn the other cheek, right?
Totally. And this is where it gets really cool. Stoicism, Christianity, they come from totally different backgrounds, but they seem to agree on certain virtues, self-control, compassion, even like a duty to something bigger than yourself.
It's like they both want a more just and compassionate world, but have different roadmaps to get there.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes you wonder, did Stoicism actually shape early Christian teachings since it came first?
I mean, it's something to think about. Stoicism was hugely influential, right? It was everywhere in Roman life. So as Christianity was growing, those ideas were already around.
Mm.
It's tough to say for sure if there was direct influence, but the potential for those shared ethics, it's fascinating.
Right, right. Okay, but this brings up something we can't ignore.
What's that?
We're talking compassion, forgiveness, but Marcus Aurelius lived when Christians were being persecuted.
Right, yeah.
And it's not clear where he stood on that. So how do we reconcile that, knowing what we know from his writing?
It's a really important thing to consider, and it shows how tricky it can be when you're looking at historical figures, you know? It's easy to judge the past by what we know now, but Marcus Aurelius, he lived in a completely different time. He's an emperor. His job is keeping this giant empire together.
So we have to understand his world, try to see it through his eyes.
Exactly, and realize that everyone, even the people we put on pedestals, are complex. Good and bad, you know? To really get them, we need to see all of it, not just the parts that make sense to us.
So it's about holding those two things, his wisdom and then his actions as a historical figure. We can learn from him and still wrestle with the parts that don't fit with our values today.
It's about being nuanced, realizing history is rarely black and white. It's shades of gray, it's complicated.
That's true. And it's a reminder that, this search for knowledge, for a good life, it's not about getting to the finish line. It's about the journey itself.
Totally.
Always learning, uncovering new things. And sometimes those discoveries challenge what we thought we knew.
Absolutely. And to me, that's a huge takeaway from Marcus Aurelius, from all of Stoicism. It's about constantly looking inward, improving, and trying to actually live our values, even when it feels like the world wants us to do the opposite.
So how do we do that? Take these old ideas and make them work now.
I think you have to start by remembering Marcus Aurelius wasn't trying to, lay down the law, He was just sharing his thoughts, hoping they might help someone someday. He even talks about a future reader in his writing.
It's like he knew we'd be here.
Right. It's amazing, and I think that shows how powerful his words are. As we get to the end of our deep dive on meditations, there's this quote I wanted to share. He says, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one."
Wow. Straight to the point.
Right. He's telling us to get up and do it, not just talk about it.
Actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. I think there's a lot to unpack there.
For sure.
As we go on our own ways.
How about you? Anything from today's talk really stick with you, something you'll carry forward?
Honestly, it's the idea that inner peace isn't about pretending the hard stuff isn't there. It's about facing it head on with wisdom, strength, and maybe a dose of Stoic acceptance.
Love that.
Knowing what we can control and then finding that inner freedom that nothing can mess with.
It's a journey, that's for sure.
Worth taking, even when it's a struggle. Absolutely. It reminds me of something else he said. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way."
Wow.
One last thought from the emperor himself.
That's a good one.
He's challenging us, right? To see roadblocks as a different way forward. To remember that even when things are hard, we always have a choice to make.
That's what it's all about, wouldn't you say?
100%.
Stoicism, a good life.
Couldn't said it better myself.
It's funny, right? We talk about inner peace, finding freedom within.
Yeah.
But Marcus Aurelius, he wasn't saying to just, check out from the world. He was an emperor, running an empire's serious business.
So true. And that's important because Stoicism isn't about hiding away to think deep thoughts. It's about taking those insights, that clarity, and actually using them.
So it's about action, doing something with that wisdom.
100%. Marcus Aurelius, he truly believed in being engaged, contributing to the common good, even while knowing we can't control everything. He comes back to that idea a lot.
And that makes so much sense today. It's easy to look around at everything happening and feel like, what can I even do? My actions are too small.
It's a common feeling, but that's where the Stoic idea of cosmopolitanism comes in.
Okay.
They believed we are all citizens of the world, connected, responsible for each other.
I like that.
It's a really beautiful concept.
It is, especially with so much division these days. It's a good reminder that we're not alone. We're part of something way bigger.
Yes. And that even little things, acts of kindness, helping out in our communities, those things spread outwards.
Okay.
We may not see it right away, but it matters. It makes the world a little bit better.
So it's not about becoming some perfect person or fixing everything.
Right.
But just showing up, doing what we can where we are.
Exactly. Focus on what you have some influence over. Marcus Aurelius talked about that a lot. Doing what's right in each moment, whether it gets you praise or not. Powerful message. empowering, but also keeps you grounded.
It really does. We all have a part to play, even if it feels small sometimes.
Yeah.
And that even when things are tough, uncertain, we can still find meaning in living by our values.
You said that perfectly. It's like what Marcus Aurelius was getting at. A meaningful life, it's not about what you achieve outwardly, it's about how you live day to day with intention, with good character.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from meditations, from everything we talked about?
You know, it goes back to what we were saying earlier. Marcus Aurelius, he wasn't handing us a rule book.
Yeah.
He was just sharing his own thoughts, his own journey to live a good life when things are complicated. And he invites us to do the same.
It's like he's saying, think for yourself, wrestle with these questions, find your own way, but use wisdom, use compassion, and try to be good along the way.
Exactly. It's a journey worth taking, even when it's tough, even when it's unclear. It's in those moments when we're questioning, when we're struggling, that we often find the most profound insights, you know?
It's about being okay with the whole process, the good and the bad, and finding those moments of clarity, those connections we make along the way.
And remembering we're not alone in it. We have each other, and we have the wisdom of those who came before us, like Marcus Aurelius, to learn from, to be inspired by.
So, like Marcus Aurelius might say, let's go out there and live our best lives, with wisdom, with courage, and trying to make things a little bit better than we found them.
Beautifully said.
Thanks so much for being here for this deep dive into Marcus Aurelius. And to everyone listening, we'll be back next time to explore more of history's greatest hits. Until then, keep seeking, keep asking those big questions, and live with intention.
I love it.